To invite up Mark Anders and Stephen Heitz to give you a look.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, there's been a lot about Flex today, and Flex has really made it much easier for developers to create rich internet applications because it presents a component-based model that really makes sense to them. But designers don't work like developers. They tend to pick up a tool like Photoshop and draw a picture of the application, and what they then do is give that to developers to implement. So what we wanted to do was to make it easier for designers to actually build the application and to enable a much smoother workflow between designers and developers. So Thermo is a new tool that we're developing, and what it does is it makes it really intuitive for a designer to create rich internet applications. It allows them to start with static images, a picture of what the application looks like, and to transform it in place into a running application. It allows them to wire up interactivity, such as what happens when somebody clicks on something, and to do that without writing any code. And one of the hardest things in developing applications is working with data, and Thermo allows the designer to create applications that use dynamic data without actually having access to that data source. Perhaps most importantly though, the applications that a designer creates are Flex applications. And Thermo provides a seamless workflow for developers working with Flex Builder. And the benefit of this is that it allows designers to really take their design much further and to be actually part of the production application with no loss of fidelity. So a designer can truly own the design of the application during the iterative development process. So Stephen Heitz is going to walk us through using the early version of Thermo and give you a better idea of how it works.
Great, thanks a lot, Mark. So while Mark was talking, I loaded up Thermo here. And you're going to notice as we walk through Thermo today that it looks and feels like a designer tool, a tool that customers of and users of Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, and Fireworks are going to feel very comfortable in. There's a number of new UI elements in Thermo that I'm going to point out along the way as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new RIA application design in Thermo. And to do that, I'm going to leave the default settings here at 1024 by 768. I'm going to say New File. So I've got a new blank application canvas here. Now, I can use some of the drawing tools in Thermo to wireframe out some of the major sections of my app here. I could also use these drawing tools to create new graphics from scratch or to manipulate graphics that I may bring into this tool from something like Photoshop or Fireworks or Illustrator. So I'll grab the rounded rectangle tool here and I'll go onto my application canvas, and here's one of the new UI elements you'll notice. As I drag out this rectangle, you'll notice this in-context display. It gives us quick and easy access to the X, Y, and coordinates of this rectangle as I drag it out. You'll also notice after the rectangle is selected, I have this in-context display that gives me quick and easy access to some of the common properties. Like I could turn this rectangle a nice dark gray here. I'm going to map out another section of my app here. Maybe this will be a status window as we start to build this up. And I will turn this a nice shade of green. Mark doesn't like green.
Well, what's really important, I think, is, this is very cool that you can use Thermo to draw some graphics, but under the hood, what's happening is that Thermo is actually creating a Flex application. And so it's generating source code, and we can actually access this source code from within Thermo. So Steve, why don't you flip to source code?
Okay, so I'll go to source code view in Thermo here.
And so this is the source code to what Stephen has done so far, and for those of you who know Flex, this will seem familiar. This is MXML, which is the language that Flex uses, and you've seen it a lot this morning as people have created applications. But the tags that we have here are a little bit different, if you notice. They represent graphics. So one of the things we've done is we've enhanced the Flex framework with all of the concepts that a designer uses. So we have a complete representation of all the graphics that Flash has. But since it's Flex, you can then take that and augment that with things like states and transitions to make it really come alive. And in fact, what Stephen can do is modify the code, so why don't you change that green to something nice like gray.
Okay, I'll change it back to gray. Mark likes any color as long as it's a shade of gray. So now we see the change reflected in our design canvas.
That's more like it.
But I'm going to close this design, and we're going to take a look at another workflow in Thermo that we think is going to be very common. And to do that, I'm going to minimize Thermo for a second. I'm going to go down to Photoshop, and I'm going to pull up a comp, a static comp of an app that one of our designers just put together for us. Now, this is intended to be a music browser, and I wanted to thank Sub Pop Records out of Seattle, Washington for lending us some of their popular CD titles today.
We do have friends in Seattle.
We do have friends in Seattle. And so this is a static comp. It doesn't do anything, and it's hard for me to express exactly how I want the behavior to look and feel and what to happen when I mouse over things here. But you'll notice that the designer adhered to some best practices. They put the images in layers within the Photoshop project here. Text is in its own layers, so it'll be things that we can work with pretty easily in Thermo when we bring this in. So let me close Photoshop. And we'll go back to Thermo. And so now I'm going to start a new RIA application, but this time I'm going to do it by importing in that Photoshop PSD file. So I'll say import file. I found that PSD that we were just looking at. It'll take a second here. Now we have some options when we bring this PSD file in. How do we want the layers in that Photoshop file to be treated? In this case, I want them to be PNGs, so they'll be objects that we can start to work with in our Thermo app. Text will come in as Photoshop text, and it'll preserve the color and the font and the size, everything, all the properties of the text. So we'll bring that Photoshop file in, and now it's on my Thermo canvas. So it's actually been converted to MXML.
So why don't we take a look at that? And as you can see, so this is obviously a larger example of the graphics tags in use. And as you'd expect, most of them are bitmap graphic objects. If you scroll down, you can see the text objects that Stephen spoke about. And what's exciting about this is that we've retained actually the textual information and the fonts that were selected, and we can use this as we're turning this into a real app.
In fact, I can actually run our app right now because it is a Flex app.
It is a Flex app.
Yep. And so we'll build this and we'll bring it up in the standalone Flash player. You'll see it's a Flex app. It still doesn't do anything yet. It's still just a picture of a Flex app. So if I click on things, it doesn't work. But that's the next step we're going to do. We're going to start to now turn this static comp, or this picture of an app, into a real app. So the first thing I'm going to do is our designers drawn this rectangle up here. This is supposed to be a text box. So this rectangle here, and then we brought in some Photoshop text here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to use a command in Thermo called convert artwork to, and I'm going to convert it to a text input. So the only indication that really changed there, because it's still in place, it still looks the same, the only indication we have is that now when we click on properties for this, we get properties for a text input control. And just with that one change right there, I'm going to run our app now and see what happened. So this will compile the app, and this will bring it up now in the standalone Flash player. And now we go into here, we now see that we can type in this text box.
And as you see, it picked up all of the font information that we had there because it had the text. So why don't we take a look at actually what Thermo did under the covers.
Okay. So since I have the text box selected on the canvas here, when I go to source view, that's going to be the item that's selected here. And again, designers never have to go to source view, but it's here and powerful if you want it.
Right. And this, by the way, is the full Flex Builder editor, so that if you start typing code, you get great statement completion. But what you're seeing is what Thermo did is it took that picture and it extracted information as to the size and positioning, and it created a text control. It picked up the font information from the text and the font that was also in that graphic, and it set those as properties of the text control, and then it took the bitmap images and turned those into